What data can AI access today in our environment? And I've been in boardrooms where that question was asked and there was no answer. If you go in front of your board or a regulator or a court and you say, well, we had a policy, that is not defensible.
Show me your thousands of policies and I will show you an agent willing to break all of your policies. Moriah, I am so excited to talk to you about your new book, about AI security. You've been a CISO 3 times at Fortune 500 companies, IPG, BMO, Wells Fargo, leading security teams through these massive transformations, cloud, the proliferation of AI. Let's get right into it. What has changed the most about the job?
Yeah, sure. Well, Madeline, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. We are going through so much change right now as security leaders. The one change I would say is one word: speed. So with the cloud adoption a few years ago, we had about 2 years to plan and really implement what the Cloud Security Alliance recommended we do, and we did catch up at some point. But the advent of AI kind of came on the market and came into our business environments in a very, very quick fashion when ChatGPT got released. And we're very much in reactive mode right now. Most CISOs are a bit scattered in the way they're securing 1 or 2 gap solutions, but very, very few of us have a mature program implemented or planned.
Yeah, I mean, just yesterday we had OpenAI saying that one of their models hacked into Hugging Face. And that is just another part of the fire hose of information and things that we need to prepare for as security leaders. And this stuff is happening daily at this point.
Right.
We're learning more about what these models are capable of. And that kind of goes into, you founded CISO NextGen community a couple years ago to provide CISOs the tools, the knowledge, the solutions, the connections with each other to excel in their role.
Yeah.
What did you see that made you want to build this bridge?
Yeah, well, I understand the seed. I understand the challenges that CISOs have in the profession, both on a personal level and a functional level. And there was nothing really out there that was built by CISOs for CISOs. Mm-hmm. And I really want to provide security leaders just-in-time news, frameworks, and tools to let them really thrive in their roles. Most CISOs do not have time to read a 30-page white paper or spend a lot of time at Gartner. They really need to know what they need to pivot on very quickly when you think of the changes happening. And we were all talking about securing AI models last year. Now it's all about AI agents. Quantum security is coming. So I'm one step ahead, making sure to inform my CISO community on what they need to do to excel in their careers.
In our meetings with security leaders, we see a wide range of readiness. We see some, if really most, are coming with, they're learning fast, they're meeting with lots of vendors, but they don't have a plan. They don't have a North Star. And that leads to slowness. Yeah. On the other side, we have companies that come to us saying, here's our goals, here's our plan, here's our North Star, here's what we're working towards. And those are the companies that move fast. Mm-hmm. And in your new book, Board-Defensible, 12 Steps to a Secure AI Program, you give people a plan. You give them a structure, 3 acts: see it, secure it, govern it. How did you decide what really mattered?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started with see it because that hasn't changed. If you haven't identified what AI models you have, what agents you have in your environment, what they're accessing, and you only secure 50% of them, then don't even bother, right?
Yeah.
So the first chapter in the book goes into how to do the inventory on a practical level. I'm also interviewing CISOs from MassMutual, Amerisbank, and others to get practical insight on how to do it. I also provide tools and templates so you can just hit the ground running. The second area is use case classification, because as I mentioned, cybersecurity is a risk management science. So you can't secure everything right away. Otherwise, a business would have no money left to run the company. So you have to make decisions, and you have to decide where the highest risk applications of AI are, and focus on locking those down first. And the third one is data security. So we talked about how that pillar of security that's always been around has become much, much more of a priority in the AI era. You need to know who has access. First of all, you have to know where it is. Where is your sensitive data? And as we said, less than 50% of CISOs are confident that they do know where their sensitive and crown jewels exist. And that's after most companies having a security program for 15 years. So we really need to step on and improve in that area. Because if you don't know where your sensitive data exists right now in your company, you can't turn on Copilot and let it access your SharePoint servers, because your compensation data for every employee in the company may be in a share that has not been restricted. And then your AI intern will have access to that and get very upset. So, so the data security is the third chapter, which is just a very, very important one. The fourth one is all about identity governance. Identity is a very important control plane in the AI era. For every employee, I think now there's 84 agents. It is still the responsibility of the human that has created those agents to do quarterly access reviews for those agents, to make sure that the principle of least privilege has been applied when launching those accounts. As we saw with the OpenAI incident, where their agents were able to use an internal sharing tool to access Hugging Face, we need to make sure that we're applying the identities of how we treat a person to these, what we probably used to think of them as a service account or non-human identities. There are equivalent to human accounts in terms of the damage, if not more.
Yeah. Going back to your point on data security, you have to connect your data to AI if you want any sort of outcomes from it. So it's not a matter of let's just not give AI access to our sensitive data. You have to give it access to sensitive data in order for it to give you the outcomes that the business is looking for. But then you move on to identity. How is that sensitive data being used? By which human, which agent? Are they allowed to use that sensitive data to do this action right now? There's so many layers. I heard someone the other day, Ron, who leads our AI practice at Varonis, he said an agent is just an LLM given a computer. And when you think about a human,
that's scary.
It's really scary. Yeah.
Much scarier than a human.
Yeah. So you give a human a computer when they start at a company, and you have policies, you have restrictions, you hopefully know what they can access and what they can't, although that doesn't always happen. But now you have an agent who doesn't need work-life balance, who doesn't need to go to sleep, an agent that just wants to work and will find any way to work. So it's,
it has aggregated all the brains in the world.
Yeah. And it doesn't, show me your thousands of policies and I will show you an agent willing to break all of your policies.
That's correct. Which is why, if we're not able in the immediate term to control agents, because there have been use cases where there are rules that were given to some agents that provisioned identity access, and they overruled some of that, and they provisioned excessive access based on its own decision. So if in the immediate term we don't have control of some of the agents, at a minimum, you need control of your data. As soon as you know where your data is and you put down permissions that lock out whatever and whoever tries to access it, the risk of agents going rogue within your own company is mitigated significantly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to go back to the title, the first two words of your book, Board-Defensible. That's a really loaded word. Talk to me about what makes something board defensible and what makes something board non-defensible. I don't know if that's a word.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the end of the day, the CISO is the most senior executive responsible for the cybersecurity and the protection of the employees and the agents and the business and its reputation. If something happens, then you can't just point to, well, we had policies for this. So if an agent was able to access, let's just say, very sensitive intellectual property, and it was exfiltrated or leaked onto the internet, if you go in front of your board or a regulator or a court and you say, well, we had a policy, that is not defensible. What you need to, what risk management actually is saying, we were aware of this gap. This was the control we wanted to put in. This was the reason there was a delay, and here was the sign-off. So as I mentioned, the risk management science is making decisions and hard calls. Sometimes you can't put controls in for a variety of reasons, but the business has to be aware of it, or if they don't want that control in, they need to sign off and accept the risk. So when something does happen, there is an understanding that the security executive was aware of it, and there was a joint decision to make around that risk.
Yeah. It seems like that's a lot around intentionality. Like, did we know what the risk was? How did we plan for it? Why did this happen? Because you can't walk into the board and say, whoopsie.
Exactly. Pointing to the number of policies you have is not an answer.
Okay, so Moriah, you authored the perfect scorecard, how to get an A with the board. I want to get in a board defensible mindset right now. So I'm going to ask you some fastball questions to get in that board defensible mindset. And the first one is, if a board member has 5 minutes and one question they should ask about AI risk, what should that question be?
What data can AI access today in our environment? And I've been in boardrooms where that question was asked, and there was no answer. There was sort of frozen silence. And I would say if you ask that question today in front of most security leaders, what data does your AI have access to holistically, that would be a challenge to answer. But you need to get really good at that, even if you don't have 100% visibility. Put a plan together to get there.
What's a metric that looks great on a slide, but actually means nothing?
Yes, I've seen the metric number of AI policies published. That shows intent, but it does not show outcome. Especially if you're in front of the board, you want risk metrics that are articulating the risk that you're reducing holistically to the reputation, to the financial risk of a company. So number of AI policies, I think that's a throwaway. I think number of vulnerabilities in AI environments reduced. That is, you should absolutely not use that. I think you need to discuss, you have to reposition it in terms of risk. And there's ways to do that. If you have, a lot of companies have a variety of metrics that are integrated and aligned to the NIST framework. And if you combine those metrics and you give a score based on the 5 pillars, you're able to give a much more better indicator of the aggregate risk in the environment versus talking about kind of a very solo metric of number of vulnerabilities reduced, because you may have reduced your 10,000 vulnerabilities by 1,000, but you still have 9,000 vulnerabilities. So we don't know if that's good, bad, or otherwise. We don't know if the 1,000 that you reduced were the ones that mattered, or the ones that really exposed the company, or maybe they were low risk vulnerabilities. So I think when CISOs talk to the board, they have to reposition their narrative in terms of how much risk is being reduced, and not so much to the tooling and kind of the month-to-month program management stats that we're used to.
Yeah, that doesn't give any context that the board is looking for.
That's right.
Moriah, again, I'm so glad we got to talk about this. I think CISOs sometimes feel alone when they're trying to manage these security programs. They're trying to go to the board. They're trying to digest a fire hose of information coming at them. And I really think your book is going to give them that succinct plan that a lot of them are looking for. So when your book drops in August, how do you want a CISO to feel by chapter 12 that they didn't feel at chapter 1?
Not overwhelmed, in control, knowing what to prioritize. You mentioned CISOs feeling alone. I actually did a survey of in my CISO NextGen community, and what I was surprised about was the number of, when I asked, what is your biggest challenge in the role? There was a high number of people who responded isolation in the role. And what that means is you're sort of on your own. The CIO and the CTO are focused on enabling the business, sometimes taking some orders or implementing a lot of the security program agenda. But the role, it's a pretty lonely role. And there's generally not a lot of support because it's an overhead cost at the end of the day. You are giving a lot of work to a lot of areas, and there is some friction when you implement security, as we all know. So I want CISOs not to feel as isolated in their role. I want them to know that there's peers and community that want to have discussions and share their insights to help them be successful, and make sure that they actually give the questions and concerns that they have to the community, and make sure that they feel like we're all in this together.
Yeah, that's so great. And I mean, what you do with CISO NextGen, like giving them that true peer-to-peer community. I mean, I'm sure when you were in your roles, you felt some sense of isolation that really led you to do everything that you're doing now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The role, and it's been documented, has a toll on a lot of people's personal lives, and it's a very much a firefighter role that doesn't get appreciated very much until something happens. There's a lot of expectations, and both from the business that you have to manage, as well as just doing the right thing and making sure that you're not going too fast or too slow. You really have to read the risk culture in whatever environment you're in. That's also something that you absolutely need to do. So the reason I built CISO NextGen was to really and by the way, the book that I'm writing for CISOs is written because I've come across so many CISOs that I'm talking to that are just asking a lot of point solutions, and they're, again, very reactive mode. So the community is there for peers to talk to each other. The book is there to give them that North Star that you mentioned, give them the structure at the level that they need, not too detailed. It is aligned to the frameworks that they're building out, and gives them a starting point and an end point. So they're in this AI journey, and it's not just security, by the way. We talked right now about agent models and agent behaviors. Nobody, the other bigger conversation is who owns, there's AI security, but there's other risks like behavioral monitoring of the agents, right? Or bias, and who owns that? Nobody really owns that right now. And I hear a lot of CISOs saying, somebody should look at this. I actually think it's a great opportunity for CISOs to own AI risk broadly, not just in the security realm. And we'll see kind of where that evolves.
Yeah. So tell people where they can get your book and learn more about CISO NextGen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I love to meet people. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, say hello. My website, CISONextGen.com, is where you can get access to the book, the templates, and a lot of the frameworks that I'm giving out. I will be releasing a chapter every few weeks, so I look forward to connecting and being with you together in this journey.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. I'm just so glad you're doing this.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.